Dmitri, you have a very strong frame, and it's not because you're being. We all know people who go against the grain just to go against the grain. Whereas Dimitri will go against the grain or question your thought process because he genuinely is questioning your thought process.
And welcome back to the Amazing Marketing Show, where we talk about all things marketing. And this week, we are talking about something that many of you and many of us have had a lot of fun with in the past, and it's called alcohol. I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Gray. Chris, how's it going?
Dimitri, what up, bro?
Man, all the stories I'm sure that we and our listeners all have that are related to alcohol, hopefully mostly good, mostly friendly. We know some people are fighters when they get drunk. We're not talking about those stories. A lot of good stories. So I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite booze?
My favorite booze nowadays it is tequila, specifically a blanco, because it doesn't. I don't get. I've learned what alcohol messes with me versus which ones that don't. So I like whiskey. I would tell you, hey, I like a good whiskey, a good rye whiskey, but I can drink one of those and wake up the next day feeling like I had 10 of them. Whereas I can drink like four tequila drinks or whatever, and wake up, not feeling 100%, but not feeling terrible, So, but I will tell you, want me to tell you my most embarrassing
Let's hear
alcohol
it,
story
please.
that I will share on air? This happened when I was like 18 years old in high school. I was drinking. Somebody's parents were out of town, and I was drinking. We were all drinking, and I was super drunk. And some kids who had graduated the year before me, some guys that were on our basketball team who graduated a year before me, they came to the party, and then they made me a shake, an alcoholic drink that had laxatives in it. I didn't know. I'm drunk. And so you can see where this went. I'm blackout drunk, and then I wake up and I see the trail of what happened, right? From me upstairs to the downstairs, my homeboy's downstairs, and he wakes up and he's like, what the fuck? And everybody in the house wakes up like, and I'm over there like trying to clean. I'm like desperately trying to clean up. There's no cleaning this up. It's literally a poop show. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's everywhere. And I'm over there and I'm hungover as you know what. And I never lived that down for the rest of the school year. Evil trick to play on somebody. I was so angry about it, but I'm obviously made some, that was 20 something years ago. So I could talk about it on air now, but that was the worst thing that ever happened to me with alcohol.
Dang, that is tough. Wow. That's just, and then it's also kind of sucks for whoever house that was. Maybe more so.
Yeah. I'd explain that to your parents if they come home and it stinks, Like,
Yeah, so what happened was.
Oh man, yeah.
Okay, well, good story. So, what were you drinking that day?
Oh, I don't even remember, bro. I was, 18. I was probably trash, right? It's whatever you can get your hands on at that stage.
So here's why we want to talk about this today regarding alcohol, and in this specific case, it's about a vodka. Now, everybody think of a brand of vodka that you like, and let's come back to that in a second. I want to tell you a story of back when I was in college, what the drinking style was and what people were drinking. And typically what it was is whatever you could get that's in a plastic bottle is kind of the go-to alcohol.
Yep.
Because the plastic bottle is cheap and you can easily get it from that one weird trailer down the street that doesn't check your ID. And it was just terrible, whether it was vodka or tequila or rum or whatever they sold. It didn't matter. And so there's a lot of this company called Burnett's, where I went to school, University of Maryland. There was this plastic bottle called Zelko. As a matter of fact, there was this one trip I remember. Now we're talking about college, high school stories, but I took a ski trip that was kind of a university sanctioned trip. It was to Canada. And it was supposed to be a 12-hour, 10-hour drive or something from Maryland. And the bus left at 8 a.m. sharp off of campus. You get on the bus, and it's lined, the entire aisle is lined with cases of 30 packs of natural natty lights, and every few aisles there'd be a whole bottle of Zelko. And so the plan would be from 8 a.m. you start your power hour with the beer, but then you get into the alcohol, and you get to Canada 10 hours later, which at that time, for college age kids, you could party that long. The problem was we ran into some really bad weather on the way, and the trip took, instead of 11 hours, it took 22 hours.
Oh boy.
There. There's only one bathroom on the bus, and it was all fun and games until about hour 10 or 11, where we're only halfway there, and people were throwing up in the bathroom, passing out in the bathroom. Everyone has to pee. And it did not go well. But that's kind of the picture of how I remember college being. Now, this most recent week for 4th of July, celebrated with kind of a family reunion. We've got a big extended family, and there's some kids who are still in college and graduate college, and they're like, "Oh, this is the vodka that we drink, and it's really good." And guess what brand it was?
Let me guess. Tito's.
Exactly. It's
Golly.
Tito's. Everybody's drinking Tito's in college. But that's not all yet. My Russian Soviet family, who are between the ages of 50 to 80, who are lifelong vodka drinkers, who drink they just know their vodka. They know it. There's two guys in particular who used to only drink vodka. You could never get them to drink anything else. And they have a specific vodka that they like, which was either, and they give me a whole history lesson about this, but it's either Kettle One vodka.
That's good.
Which is a solid vodka and is actually an old Russian recipe from the 1500s, I believe, that was then later sold to the Dutch. But Kettle One. Before that, they used to drink a British vodka called Three Olives until they changed ownership and something.
That was good too.
Yeah, apparently it's not good anymore, according to my family vodka experts. But guess what brand they drink now?
The hardcore Russian cats are drinking Tito's.
Tito's.
Bro.
And they won't have it any other way. You give them a Kettle One, and they'll turn their nose at it. They want their Tito's.
Wasn't there like a Russian vodka that has a fair amount of popularity here in the States? I forget the name of it. I'm surprised they weren't drinking that. Like I'll look it up later, but anyways, that's interesting that they'd like. Yeah,
there is a name. There is my namesake of Smirnov vodka.
But there was another one.
It's not considered as really a top tier vodka. Although, as we saw in our research, it used to be the number one vodka in the country. But guess who's number one now?
Tito's.
Tito's vodka just came out of nowhere, and we want to talk about and show you guys how it happened. It's Tito's. It's not Grey Goose. It's not Belvedere. It's Tito's. Your American-made, Texas-born corn vodka named Tito's.
I think there is, or I know there's some applicable marketing lessons to us and the listeners here, because you had a guy, I assume his name is Tito, making vodka in his basement or garage or whatever, and came and just took over the vodka market share. And that doesn't just happen by making some vodka and putting it on a shelf.
So this is you're right. It's a guy named Tito. His nickname was Tito. Bert Beveridge. There's no way it can't be real that his last name is Beveridge.
Yeah, bro.
Bert Beveridge is the sole owner and CEO of Tito's Handmade Vodka. I mean, what an absolute gangster to retain ownership. A former geophysicist from San Antonio, Texas, found the company in 1997. That's less than 30 years ago. And it's the number one vodka with an absurd, according to Google, 44% market share in the US.
Good gosh, that's nuts. That's nuts.
So, how does Bert Beveridge, Tito, make that happen over a 25-year span?
Well, let's talk about it, man. What is it saying?
Well, I mean, so here's what it's. I'll tell you what it's saying. But before I get into this, I kind of want to ask your personal opinion on it because you did mention Tito's as the vodka because everyone does. Everyone knows
Yeah.
Tito's. Hey, go to a bar or let's get some Tito's. But to you, how did this happen? Why did this happen? When did this happen? Like, what happened?
For me, there was some point where I wasn't a Tito's like when I was drinking big time or whatever, drinking regularly, I should say. For me, it was like it was Grey Goose for the longest time was like the vodka to get right, and so I would drink that, and then at some point, being out and about, somebody mentioned Tito's to me at some point, and then I tried it, and hey, it's not bad. And we vodka for me, man, I'm not a vodka like enthusiast like your OG Russian homeboys there. Like you give me three different vodkas, I probably won't be able to tell the difference. But it got it got introduced to me. I drank it, and I didn't get a hangover that bad. And then the more I went out, the more it was people were drinking it around me. And then next thing you know, if somebody's buying a round of drinks and they're like, oh, there's buying Tito's and a Sprite. You just take them wherever they give you. Then the next thing you know, I'm having a party and I go to the liquor store and I'm buying Tito's, a handle of Tito's instead of the Grey Goose because I know it's good and it's not as expensive. And everybody seems to love it. And then now, party after party, Tito's is in my house. And it just slowly started, or slowly happens, but it starts with somebody telling me about it.
I'm glad that you went through that explanation of kind of how it started because it reminds me of that one really famous Malcolm Gladwell book, Tipping Point, which I think had like some kind of really good point to it. It had some questionable points, but the one point that I really like and I still take away to my marketing work to this day is that there's a tipping point to trends and popularity and so how and the question is how do you get to a tipping point where after it just the snowball rolls like you were mentioning everyone's talking about Tito's, everyone's good with Tito's, everyone recommends Tito's. When they order vodka soda, it's not vodka soda, it's Tito's and soda. That's huge. And so how do you get there? And they talk about it really all comes down back to people. This is now paraphrasing the book, but how I look at it really actually changed my perspective on marketing quite a bit. And also get into why influencer marketing works. And what he's saying is that there are some people in your friend group, in your community, in your neighborhood, in your whatever group that you're in your Facebook group, whatever, any collection of people, there's a few people who are the influencers, who are the drivers of that group, of that neighborhood. Some kid when you're young, he wore those shoes to school and now you want those shoes. Whereas another kid might wear those same shoes and you don't care about them. So they're the leaders, they're the influencers. They're not Instagram famous, they're just famous in your group. And in order to get to tipping point is those people have to be on it. So how did Tito's get those people on it? Those people meaning not the people drinking at bars, but the bartenders themselves. We all want to know, well, bartender, what are you drinking? That's the cool thing. Like what are they using at cool hip Texas speakeasies? I bet it was Tito's. Like, so how did that tipping point happen?
It's an interesting, and then here we go with another marketing lesson. There's a book that Dmitri and I read called it's Pitch Anything, right, Dmitri? Something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and this guy, the premise of the book is you have this frame of thought, and if it's strong enough, you can go in there and consume other people's frames of thoughts if it's strong enough. And then he talks about how to tactically do it. And it's I like the concept, and then I think he's kind of like any writer, fluffing it up a little bit with. But anyways, um, take the Tito's thing. If like Dimitri, you have a very strong frame, and it's not because you're being. We all know people who go against the grain just to go against the grain. Whereas Dimitri will go against the grain or question your thought process because he genuinely is questioning your thought process and sparking conversation. I see this with you. I see this with Tucker Max. I see this with Jason Fladlin, where their frames can consume other people's frames because they believe what they believe in stronger or whatever. And so if you give somebody like that, um, a who has that influence in their circle and they're drinking Tito's, they'll get other people to drink it. Now, going back to Pitch Anything, if there might be a bartender and you and I meet him on the street and we're talking about anything and it's an equal conversation and maybe our frames consume his or hers. But now we meet the bartender at the bar where they are in their element now. Now their frame is stronger. It's enhanced because we are in their area of expertise. We are in their element. They now get the boost in the frame. So you give the people who have the boosted frame this Tito's. The Tito guy goes and he targets those people who have power within where they operate. The influence is going to be amazing. But this is like grassroots influencer marketing is what he did before it was a thing. He went to the people who had the power, gave them the vodka, whatever he did. They went and suggested it to people who were asking for their suggestion on what to drink. And man, that was a beautiful, beautiful marketing tactic.
I got to be honest with you. I want to like almost stop this podcast right now and go start a brand of some kind of like anything. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It's just like, just give me the brand. I want to go after these community influencers and these people are going to get it out. I really want to actually dissect this for this podcast. I think it's going to be very useful. So let's come back to that to dissect. But first, I want to read off of some of the research that it showed. So about its marketing, about Tito's marketing, it emphasized its humble beginnings and the authenticity of the founder who started the brand in his backyard. So, they have a great story. The story's authentic. It's real. It's actually him. He's the owner. He was making in his backyard. So, okay, there's a story. It's authentic. It's not a big company. It's not a conglomerate. 2, grassroots marketing. Tito's relied heavily on word of mouth and grassroots marketing, like we were talking about. He would personally visit bars and liquor stores and building relationships with bartenders. So he is doing that exactly, like especially with bartenders. I think even more so than the liquor stores, although that matters also, but it's kind of a secondary thing because first you have to build the demand with the bartenders and then have it available in liquor stores. So he himself, this is a lesson I think for all of us, is he himself, not other people, not people he hired, but he himself went and built relationships with these bartenders, which kind of is another. It's like every alcoholic or something. Like I'm just building relationships for my brand. Okay, three more here, and then I'm going to throw it back to you. So targeting event and sponsorship. So they got in with the right music events, the right cultural events, local gatherings, etc. Community involvement, number 4. That's kind of similar. And then finally the digital and social media presence, which I think we'll get to at the end. But let me throw it back to you.
Well, let's start at the top. The number 1 is a story. We've talked about the power of stories here. So I'm not going to, I'm going to try to avoid a point that we've made before, but stories are powerful. But I think some of the power in this story is the relatability. So it wasn't like it was Elon Musk, who is just assumed to be a genius, or Bill Gates assumed to be geniuses, came up with this unique formula for this vodka that has specific neurons fire off when you drink it. that type of story, that's a cool story, but like it's like you can't relate to that. I'm not that type of guy who could, engineer some vodka to get neurons to fire. Here's a guy in his basement who started vodka. And it's like, man, that's like a relatable story. Like you can see yourself in that hero. He's not somebody special. This is a guy in a basement who's decided to start a vodka company. I can go in my basement and YouTube some beer things, and I probably make terrible beer, but it's not, it's accessible if I wanted it. And so I think the beauty about his story is it's accessible, and you can put yourselves in the footprint of the founder.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that there's a story. So what's your story? What's yours? I don't mean you, Chris, but everybody listening is for your company. Do you have a story? Because you kind of need a story so people can relate to it.
Uh, One more thing now that I'm thinking, Dmitri, with your story, whoever you are, giving you guys this unsolicited advice. If it's the everyday, like, all shucks hillbilly dude, like anybody, and I say hillbilly, that could be anybody. It could be like just the everyday person. If it's if it's that person, they can talk about their story, and everybody else can put themselves in that person's shoes. But if you are like out there and you're super intelligent, not a lot of people can relate with you. Again, I mentioned Elon Musk, Bill Gates, whatever it is, where people can't see themselves in your shoes because you're so far out there. Um, you need to talk about other people's stories, like the people that you helped. So again, if you're more relatable to the everyday person, your story helps. If you're not, if you're a doctor, lawyer, something else that not everybody can kind of identify with, talk about other people's stories that you've helped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great advice on that. So having a story, but now having a story is not enough. You need the marketing. In this case, the grassroots marketing is what happened. Again, he's visiting bars, liquor stores. He's getting to these bartenders who are making a difference. And it's probably not every bartender. Just like not everyone was the cool kid in your class. Not everyone is going to the frat parties, whatever. Let's say that's what's cool in college. But somebody is. So how do we get to those people who have influence on the people around them?
I want to hear more about what you think on this. I'll tell my quick little thing about how this applies to me now. Excuse me. We are me and Andrew Pincock, who we'll eventually have on this podcast and interview him. We're looking at starting a jiu-jitsu community for business owners who are looking to be better in health, wealth, and love. Like something like that is like a mastermind, except for jiu-jitsu business owners who are looking to be better people. And when we first started, Dmitri, it was like, have a lead magnet, build an association, have a conference, and then sell a mastermind or something, right? Like all this stuff. And then we got to the point where we're like, dude, we I just kind of want the community. Like that's the whole point of all this. Like I just want to be around other people that like jujitsu and looking to be better humans, and they are successful, however we define that. And so we're like, let's just start with that. And then to do that, we're like, dude, you invite some guys you know who fit this category. I invite some guys I know who fit this category. We tell them what we're doing. We do this thing at cost because we're just trying to get proof of concept, and let's just get it going. And it's a grassroots effort that actually gets momentum as opposed to this big lead magnet association conference and then this thing. And so what I liked about what he did here, when you read that, it's like this guy, that was easy. Like he could just go out to the bar. Hey, I got this vodka. Go out to the liquor store. Hey, let me talk. It's action. He was able to take action on something that really could move the needle over time. I loved that marketing aspect, where as opposed to this digital, this, that, league magnets and whatever. Sometimes the beauty is in the simplicity and just getting the ball rolling.
I think you're right. There's two examples that I can think of, big examples of where this happened. There are two brands, very different from each other. There's Facebook, the company now Meta, and then there's Spanx, founded by Sarah Blakely. I think first or youngest woman billionaire at the time, or something like that. It was like really cool story. Starting with Facebook, they just went and asked all the frats. I believe it was, all the frats at Harvard to sign up for this. And it just exploded from there because the frat guys and gals, the sorority gals, were in the community. They were the movers and shakers of the university. They were doing a community outreach. They were also into socializing. Okay, so it was perfect for them. They went directly to a group that had influence and it made sense. Now, going to Spanx, Sarah Blakely created this product that was really good, similar to Tito, and then just went and sold it herself to department stores. She went and did it herself, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And it was a very similar story, actually, where at a certain point in time, it seemed like every single woman would wear Spanx of some sort. And Spanx is a really well known brand now, but back then it was even bigger, I think.
Dmitri, before we continue on this point, I'd like to ask you about something that you told me a few weeks ago that I considered profound, and I'd like to bring it up on air. In this story, we talk about the involvement of the owner of Tito's. And then in your story, you talked about the involvement of the owner, Mark Zuckerberg, who's still involved to this day. You talked about the Spanx owner, who I've still heard do podcasts. I'm not sure if she sold it, but a few years ago, she was still involved in Spanx. There's this whole thing that you and I hear this message about: you're the owner, you're the founder, you should not be on the org chart, you should be removed, you should have other people doing it. If you're in the business, you don't have a business. This is the e-myth type stuff we hear. But you had a really profound point that I'd like for you to share here, if you don't mind.
It's the e-myth is right, and it's being taught like it's a for sure guaranteed thing. Like you're not a business owner until you remove yourself out of the business. You're just a dancing bear. And the copy on that, the wording on that, probably is deliberate in a certain way. It's making you feel bad to be a quote unquote dancing bear. No one wants to be a dancing bear. That makes you feel like you're in the circus. If it was worded differently, if you're the engine, I want to be the engine. But there's so many speakers that come in and tell you, or books that tell you, don't be the dancing bear. You have to get yourself out of the business so you can work on the business, not in the business. Okay, that is all great in theory. But like you mentioned, with Sarah Blakely, with Mark Zuckerberg, with Elon Musk, with all the major Bill Gates and like everybody who we know, did they just give up on their business and start working? Now, maybe they weren't programming, but they were selling. They were selling that thing. They were CEOs for decades in many cases. Elon, known for sleeping and on in the office or on in the manufacturing line and making sure himself to keep everything accountable. So my realization is, if all these people, that's what they're doing to keep their business growing, why should I be focused on getting myself out of the business? Now, yes, I should be getting myself out of the day-to-day, like, grunt work, but there's a big difference between that and keeping everything accountable and keeping it up to your own standard or the company's standard that you want to set. So I want to rebrand Dancing Bear to Engine of the Business.
Yeah. I loved that point. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier to everybody is, that's a counterintuitive point that, that's Dmitri, right? Being counterintuitive, but not for the sake of being counterintuitive. That's just an example where this is what makes sense when you think about his frame and his approach to this. And I'm with you. It's like, yeah, you don't need to be doing like the day-to-day grunt work, right? You should remove yourself at some point from the grunt work. But these people who are doing it and doing it at a high level, they are in some ways in the work. Look at Steve Jobs when he was around. It wasn't his VP presenting, it's him in his black turtleneck. Like they were doing the work.
Yeah, he was a dancing bear probably more than anyone. And there's so many people who idolize him from a work perspective, from what he put in on revolutionary perspective as far as Apple and iPhone goes, especially in his second stint as CEO over there. So, I mean, it kind of depends. Are you just wanting to check out? In which case, well, who knows what's going to happen to your business? I think more often than not, if you check out, everyone's going to check out, and it's just going to fall apart. If you have a really established business, you have hundreds or thousands of employees, you might be able to get away with it. But if you want that thing to really continue to grow, I mean, I think still be involved and push it forward. That's what all these people are doing. That's what Tito did. And that's why he's got 44% of vodka market share in the US, with everyone raving about it. And they say how good it tastes. I have no idea if it tastes good or not, but it almost doesn't matter, because at this point, it's hit its exit velocity, where it's like more so about the brand than what it tastes like. It's like, yeah, whatever, it's vodka, it tastes fine, but in a brand that you love, well, it tastes great.
The last part of this, before we move forward with whatever the next point is that work that we put in every day, assuming you love what you do, the work that the founders are putting in, that is the reward. Like, don't get me wrong, you sell your company, you get a big check, that's exciting. Like that, of course, you make a bunch of money. Who doesn't like that? You go buy a new truck, or you go buy a new whatever, you get it. And then after a while, that novelty wears off. And then this is what we see with a lot of founders who sell their companies, and they go through this existential crisis because they don't know what to do. And when they look back, the fun was in all the crap that doesn't even feel like fun. Like, the losing the clients, the building this, the things that go wrong, the work is the reward. And it's easy for me to lose sight of that. But I'm in the heyday. And if I sold the company, I'll look back, I'll be like, man, when I'm twiddling my thumbs, like, I miss that type of stuff. And so this is the reward. It's the fun part, but it's easy to miss.